The next movement we're going to look at is the movement breaststroke. In this movement, you're going to lay face down on your mat in a prone position. Make sure the spine is long and your shoulders are engaged and the center's pulled up. If somebody is quite lordotic, you might want to use a towel or wrapped underneath, just underneath the pelvis. With this movement, we're going to start forward with the arms. Engaging the center without gripping the glutes. As you breathe out, reach one arm away and breathe in and low. So the first level is just lifting up both one arm and down. As you're doing it, keep the spine long. Use the out breath to help the lift up and the in breath to lower. Out breath to lift up and in to lower. Now we progress this movement by lifting up both arms at the same time. Try and keep the length of the lower back open, so you're not contracting the lower back. Breathing out as you lengthen and breathing in as you lower. The final progression of this movement is as you lift up, you reach the arms forward, circle the arms back, lengthen the spine, and come back down, bringing the arms forward. So you reach forward, lengthen, circle the arms back, reach back, and lengthen back down. Again, breathing out as you reach, take a breath in. As you breathe out, circle back, lengthen, reach back, and reach back down. One last time. Breathing out as you lengthen, take a breath in. Breathing out, check your shoulders down your back, keep the center engaged, lengthen, reaching the spine long, and release back down. Come back, sit back onto the heels, and take yourself into a release position. The next movement we're going to look at is the dart. Again, we're going to be in a prone position. You can use the gluteal bracing as a prep for this movement. But in this position, you can start with your hands in front in a diamond press and prepare the body by lengthening the spine. Engage in the center, and then keeping the spine long, take the arms down by the side. As you breathe in, you're going to slide your shoulders down the back and lift the upper body up. Taking a breath out and taking it back down. Breathing in, breathing out as you lengthen the spine. So the out breath is going to help you engage the center. Breathing in and breathing out as you go back down. Breathing in and breathing out. Check the shoulders are down the back. Check the spine is long. Keep the center engaged. To progress this movement, you could reverse the breathing and take it more into a natural breath. So as you breathe in, you lift up. But there's a lot more strength required for the core center. So make sure by week 1 and by week 6, you're still doing what we would call the protective breath, which is breathing out to lift. But breathing in to lift might be a progression you bring into the classes later on to add an extra challenge. The dart is a nice preparation for the swan dive. Shoulders down the back, keeping the spine long, and again, not over-activating the glutes. Taking it back, one last time. Shoulders down the back, lengthen the spine, keeping the neck long, and back down. And again, we're going to take the spine back and take it to a release position, lengthening out. We're going to look at the monkey squat now. With this, you can use it, first of all, without the arms. So as you're taking the squat position, remember, keeping the spine long, keeping the length of the spine, and keeping the center engaged. And start with your hands just resting on the thighs. And then coming back up. Taking a breath in. As you breathe out, lengthen. Be careful not to let the clasp dip forward. The idea is that you're looking forward with your eyes as you're taking the body down and releasing back out. So here you're getting a nice release through the hamstrings and through the glutes as you're lengthening the spine long. Now you can progress this movement. As you go down, begin to lift the arms out, first of all just to the shoulders, and come back up. You can modify it by just using one arm first. So as you're doing the movement and alternating, giving a little bit of support as you're going down the movement. Remember, even though we're focusing on releasing and stretching, to make it really a Pilates class, what you really want to do is to keep bringing those principles in. So continuous movement, flowing movement, precision. Once you're confident the class is working well, you could give the option or the permission as they go down to begin to lift the arms up, reaching the arms to the ceiling, and then coming back out. Taking a breath in as you're breathing out, reaching the arms back up to the ceiling. Think about the feet placement and the knee alignment. Often if someone is not very strong or stable in the knees, they might roll the knees in or roll the knees out. One good cue for this movement is to push on the big toe. So as you're going down, think about the big toe touching the floor and keeping that contact with the floor. So you've got those adductor muscles engaged, not just rolling the legs out. Breathing out as you go down, and breathing in as you come back up. Final progression is just to add a balance up onto the toes, coming back down. So it's a nice little balance challenge at the end of this movement. So as you're coming up, balance up, keeping the center engaged. Breathing in, breathing out as you go down. Keep the spine long. Breathing in, breathing out as you go into a little balance. Remember, with all of these, build up the progressions. Don't suddenly go to the top level, especially over your class plan, or even over the preceding weeks. Once you start teaching, always think about how you're going to start a movement and how you can build that movement or development stretch. So it progresses, giving the options as you go along. So somebody comes to class and they're feeling a little bit tired, they know it's okay. They can go back to working with just one arm. That you've installed that permission-based learning or teaching in your style of class. The next movement we're going to look at is gluteal bracing. This really challenges you to maintain that core center. From a standing position, I'm just showing you, we're going to actually turn the legs in, but as you breathe out, you're going to rotate and bring the legs together, maintaining the center. So the legs are going to come from internally rotating to turning out and externally rotating. So again, we're going to be down into a prone position. In this position here, you can put your hands in front of you and put the head on the hands. Now, so start with the legs turned in, but immediately engage the center and keep the spine long. As you breathe out, we're going to rotate the legs and just gently engage the glutes. Breathing in as you rotate in, breathing out as you engage and externally rotate. Keeping the center lifted off the mat. Imagine there's a piece of ice underneath your navel and you're lifting away from that as you're rotating. The idea is not over to contract the glutes. Breathing out as you turn, breathing in as you turn back in. Keeping that center working the whole time. One more time, breathing in, breathing out as you rotate, hold it, and you could keep it slightly turned out and hold it in a static position as you're breathing in and breathing out, checking that the shoulders are down your back and the spine is long. Taking your breath in, and as you breathe out, sit back and release back onto the heels. With the dumbwaiter, we're going to focus on alignment. So think about how you're standing. Your feet are pushing down in the floor and your spine is long. Now we're going to bring the elbows into the rib cage. As you breathe in, lengthen the spine and drop the shoulders down, keeping the chest open at the front. And as you breathe out, pull the arms to the side. Breathing in, come back in, and breathing out. So you're really focusing on that shoulder stability. You can bring props into your class, like elastic or resistance band, to add a little bit more challenge here. But my advice is if you've got a lot of people coming into your class who've got tension in the upper body, don't overuse resistance too much. Allow them to work on the mobility first and bring resistance training in when you're sure that they can engage or they've got that mobility to put the shoulders into good alignment. All through these movements, again, remind your class to keep the center engaged and to think about where the pelvis alignment is. So if somebody's a little bit more lordotic, they're not slipping into that postural habit of standing, letting the back muscles overwork. A good cue here as well with this movement is to think about the rib cage, not closing so much, but not opening out. So as you're opening the arms, the rib cage is not opening out. It's almost like you're just tying a piece of string or a piece of ribbon here, and the rib cage is staying at the same width. So the chest is open and the spine is long. Breathing in and breathing out as you open to the side. Breathing in one more time, and breathing out as you open to the side. Bring the arms back, and take the arms down.
Clam or oyster, depending on what school of Pilates you might have come through. Same difference really. Supine, lying, neutral, so you're checking on the waist, position of top pelvis to bottom pelvis. Inside edge of the feet should be together. You want to try and maintain that pelvic position, so placing a hand on the top might be another way of getting some feedback. And then as the client breathes out, you're getting them to lift the upper leg. Just take it out as far as they can without shifting the pelvis back, and then softly release down. So it's just a lift away of the top leg, using the glutes, firing those again, and then releasing down.
Extension is the opposite of flexion, so this is an increase in the angle of the joint, returning it back to the anatomical position. So for example, we have extension of the elbow. We can do extension of the shoulder here. So from this position, we'd have extension of the hip, or if we're bending over, it would be returning to the anatomical position here, so standing back upright. We could also do extension of the spine, so when we're lifting up, or extension of the neck, again, returning the head back to that anatomical position. The shoulder joint is a ball and socket joint, so it allows for the most number of movements of all of the joints of the body. So for example, here we have flexion and extension of the shoulder. We have abduction, a movement away from the midline of the body, and we have adduction, so remember adding together, so bring it back towards that midline of the body. We also have medial rotation, so rotating towards the midline of the body, so that occurs at that ball and socket joint, so right up here. And we have external rotation or lateral rotation, a movement away from the midline of the body. We have circumduction, so remember drawing a cone in the air, so shoulder stays still and we draw a circle with our fist. We also have horizontal flexion, which is also called horizontal adduction, so coming towards that midline, and horizontal extension or horizontal abduction, moving away from the midline there. Plantar flexion and dorsiflexion occur in the sagittal plane. They occur at the ankle joint, or more specifically, the talocrural joint. So here we have plantar flexion, where you move the toes away or point the toes, and dorsiflexion, where you pull the toes back. Now an easy way to remember is plantar flexion, when you're planting your foot into the floor. So we have plantar flexion. And then of course the other one is dorsiflexion. The adductors have their origin on the pubis and the ischium, and then they insert onto the femur, so they cross the hip joint. Any contraction will therefore act on the hip joint. When they do contract, as the name suggests, we get adduction of the hip, and they also laterally or externally rotate the leg. So therefore, any kicking action where you're crossing the body will target the adductor group. The abductors have their origin on the ilium and the sacrum, and then they insert onto the femur, so they cross the hip joint. When they contract, we'll get abduction of the leg, so a movement away from the midline of the body, and we also get internal rotation of the femur, so internal rotate, the toes come in towards the midline there. Now these muscles will work when we're walking and running, so they stabilize the hip, and also if we want to target them specifically in an exercise, we could do side leg lifts. Hyperextension is extension of the joint beyond the anatomical position. So if we consider the anatomical position here, hyperextension of the shoulder would take it back here, or of the spine, this would be hyperextension, or we have hyperextension of the hip, taking it back there. So there's just a few examples. The deltoids have their origin on the clavicle and the scapula, and then they insert onto the humerus. So they cross just the shoulder joint. The main action of the deltoids is abduction of the shoulder joint. However, the anterior head will assist in medial rotation of the shoulder and also horizontal flexion, while the posterior head will assist in lateral rotation of the shoulder joint and horizontal extension. A common exercise would be deltoid raise or lateral raise, or you've got shoulder press. Biceps brachii has its origin on the scapula and inserts onto the radius. So therefore it crosses both the shoulder and the elbow joint. Its main actions therefore include flexion of the elbow, and because of where it inserts on the radius, it also does supination of the forearm, so that's turning the palm up. As it crosses the shoulder joint as well, it will act on that, and it assists in flexion of the shoulder. The main exercise, of course, is bicep curl. The hip joint is a ball and socket joint, and it allows for movement in 3 planes. We have flexion and extension, as well as hyperextension. We also have abduction and adduction. We have medial rotation and lateral rotation, circumduction, and we have horizontal flexion and horizontal extension. The gastrocnemius muscle has its origin on the femur and then inserts right down on the calcaneus at the back of the heel here. So it crosses both the knee and the ankle joint. When it contracts, we get plantar flexion, so lifting up onto your toes, and it will also assist the hamstring group in flexion of the knee. Of course, any exercise where you go up on your toes, most commonly of which is calf raises, will target the gastrocnemius muscle. While each individual intervertebral joint doesn't allow for very much movement at all, it's the combination of all the vertebrae together within the spine that allows for a much greater range of movement. So for example, we have flexion of the spine, and we can do extension. We have rotation, so rotating here, and we also have lateral flexion. Both the distal and proximal radio-ulnar joints are pivot joints, so they allow for rotation. And in this particular case, what we're looking for is supination, so turning the palm up, and pronation, turning the palm down. The internal obliques have their origin on the ilium and insert onto the lower portion of the ribs. So they therefore act on the vertebral column and mainly the lumbar and thoracic region. When they contract, we'll get lateral flexion of the spine, or we'll get rotation of the spine. An example exercise would be side lying curls. The tibialis anterior muscle has its origin on the tibia and then inserts all the way down onto the first metatarsal. So it crosses the ankle joint. When it contracts, we get dorsiflexion, so pulling back of the toes. It does get worked quite a lot because you're always, when you're walking, you're working tibialis anterior to lift your toes. The latissimus dorsi has its origin on the sacrum, all of the lumbar vertebrae, and the lower 6 thoracic vertebrae, so that's 7 through 12. And then it inserts onto the humerus, so therefore it crosses the shoulder joint and will act on that. Its actions include adduction of the shoulder joint. It also extends the shoulder joint and does medial or inward rotation. A common exercise for the lats is the lat pull down. The wrist joint is a condyloid joint, so it allows for flexion, a decrease in that angle, and extension, an increase in the angle. We also have abduction, a movement away from the midline of the body, and adduction, a movement towards the midline of the body. The knee joint is a hinge joint and it allows for movement in one plane. It allows for flexion and extension. The elbow joint is a hinge joint and it can perform flexion, so a decrease in that angle of the joint, and extension, an increase in the angle of the joint. The talocrural joint also forms part of the ankle joint and it can perform plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. Lateral flexion is a movement of the spine that occurs in the frontal plane. So it simply refers to leaning to the side. So that's lateral flexion on either side. The pectoralis major has its origin on the clavicle and the sternum, and then inserts onto the humerus. Therefore crosses the shoulder joint and acts on that. So its actions include horizontal flexion and also adduction of the shoulder joint. It will also assist in medial rotation of the shoulder. Common exercises would include the pec deck and also the push-up. The gastrocnemius muscle has its origin on the femur and then inserts right down on the calcaneus at the back of the heel here. So it crosses both the knee and the ankle joint. When it contracts, we get plantar flexion so lifting up onto your toes, and it will also assist the hamstring group in flexion of the knee. Of course, any exercise where you go up on your toes, most commonly of which is calf raises, will target the gastrocnemius muscle. The quadricep muscles, quad meaning four, is made up of four muscles. We have vastus medialis, vastus intermedius, and vastus lateralis, and rectus femoris. Rectus femoris has its origin on the ilium, while the other three muscles have their origin on the femur. And then they insert down onto the tibia, so they cross both the hip and the knee joint. So when rectus femoris contracts, we get flexion of the hip. When all four muscles contract, we get extension of the knee. So you'll find that you'll target these muscles during things like squats, but also more specifically in an exercise like leg extension. The gastrocnemius muscle has its origin on the femur and then inserts right down on the calcaneus at the back of the heel here. So it crosses both the knee and the ankle joint. When it contracts, we get plantar flexion, so lifting up onto your toes, and it will also assist the hamstring group in flexion of the knee. Of course, any exercise where you go up on your toes, most commonly of which is calf raises, will target the gastrocnemius muscle. The iliopsoas muscle has its origin on all of the lumbar vertebrae and the ilium, and then it inserts onto the femur, so it's going to cross the hip joint here. When it contracts, it will therefore give us hip flexion. So common exercises would include anything that has hip flexion, such as any kicking action. The origin of the obliques is on the lower portion of the ribs and inserts onto the ilium, so it runs this way. When they contract, one side we get lateral flexion, or we get rotation of the thoracic spine. Of course, when the other side contracts, we get it the other way. An example exercise would be oblique curls. The hamstring group of muscles have their origin on the ischium, and then they insert on the tibia and fibula down just below the knee joint here. So they cross both the hip and the knee joint, so will act on both those joints. They can do either extension of the hip joint or flexion of the knee. Of course, the most common exercise, as the name suggests, is hamstring curls. So in the gym, lying down on the bench, doing hamstring curls. The gastrocnemius muscle has its origin on the femur and then inserts right down on the calcaneus at the back of the heel here. So it crosses both the knee and the ankle joint. When it contracts, we get plantar flexion, so lifting up onto your toes, and it will also assist the hamstring group in flexion of the knee. Of course, any exercise where you go up on your toes, most commonly of which is calf raises, will target the gastrocnemius muscle.